USA Timeline History. Today we will highlight noteworthy events and social, political, and economic trends in the history of the world's superpower country United States of America from 1775 to 2021. Dear friends, subscribe our channel and press the bell icon to get notification. 1775. American Revolution. George Washington leads Continental Army to fight against British rule. 1776. The 4th of July. Declaration of Independence endorsed by Congress. Colonies declare independence. 1781. Rebel states form loose confederation after defeating the British at the Battle of Yorktown. 1783. Britain accepts loss of colonies by virtue of Treaty of Paris. 1787. Founding Fathers draw up new Constitution for United States of America. Constitution comes into effect in 1788. 1789. George Washington elected first President of USA. 1803. France sells Louisiana territories to USA. 1812–15. War of 1812 between the US and Britain, partly over the effects of British restrictions on US trade during the Napoleonic Wars. 1846–48. US acquires vast tracts of Mexican territory in wake of Mexican War including California and New Mexico. 1854. Opponents of slavery, or abolitionists, set up Republican Party. 1860. Republican candidate Abraham Lincoln elected president. 1898. U.S. gains Puerto Rico, Guam, the Philippines and Cuba following the Spanish-American War. 1917–18. U.S. intervenes in World War I, but rejects membership of League of Nations in its aftermath. 1920. Women given the right to vote under the 19th Amendment. 1924. Congress gives indigenous people right to citizenship. 1929–33. More than 13 million people are unemployed after the Wall Street stock market crash of 1929 triggers the Great Depression. President Herbert Hoover rejects direct federal relief. 1933. President Franklin D. Roosevelt launches New Deal recovery program which includes major public works. 1941. Japanese warplanes attack U.S. fleet at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii, leading to U.S. joining World War II against the Axis powers. 1945. U.S. drops 2 atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Japan surrenders. 1950–53. U.S. forces play leading role against North Korean and Chinese troops in Korean War. 1954. Racial segregation in schools becomes unconstitutional. Start of campaign of civil disobedience to secure civil rights for Americans of African descent. 1960. Democratic Party candidate John F. Kennedy elected president, narrowly defeating his rival Richard Nixon. 1961. Bay of Pigs invasion, an unsuccessful attempt to invade Cuba by Cuban exiles, organized and financed by Washington. 1962. U.S. compels Soviet Union to withdraw nuclear weapons from Cuba in what has become known as the Cuban Missile Crisis. 1963. President John F. Kennedy assassinated. Lyndon Johnson becomes president. 1968. Black civil rights leader Martin Luther King assassinated. 1969. Republican Party candidate Richard Nixon elected president. U.S. astronaut Neil Armstrong becomes the first person to walk on the moon. 1972. Nixon re-elected and makes historic visit to China that leads to recognition of the communist government. 1973. Vietnam ceasefire agreement signed. The campaign had claimed some 58,000 American lives. 1974. President Nixon resigns in the Watergate scandal over a 1972 break-in at the Democratic Party headquarters. 1976. Democratic Party candidate Jimmy Carter elected president. 1979. U.S. Embassy in Tehran, Iran, seized by radical students. The 444-day hostage crisis, including a failed rescue attempt in 1980 November. Republican Party's Ronald Reagan elected president. 1986 January. Space Shuttle Challenger explodes shortly after takeoff from Cape Canaveral. All 7 crew members are killed. 1986. US warplanes bomb Libyan cities. Irangate scandal uncovered, revealing that proceeds from secret US arms sales to Iran were used illegally to fund Contra rebels in Nicaragua. 1988. Reagan's vice president, George Bush, elected president. 1991. US forces play dominant role in war against Iraq, which was triggered by Iraq's invasion of Kuwait and ended with the expulsion of Iraqi troops from that country. 1992. Democratic Party candidate Bill Clinton elected president. 1992. Congress passes North American Free Trade Agreement, or NAFTA, intended to create free trade bloc among US, Canada and Mexico. 1995. Oklahoma bomb by far-right activists kills more than 160 people in worst ever incident of its kind in US. 1999 March to June. US plays leading role in NATO bombardment of Yugoslavia in response to Serb violence against ethnic Albanians in the province of Kosovo. 2000 November. Republican Party's George W. Bush wins presidency. The 11th of September 2001. Coordinated suicide attacks on World Trade Center, New York. 2001 October. US leads massive campaign of airstrikes against Afghanistan and helps opposition forces defeat the Taliban regime. 2003 February. Space Shuttle Columbia's 28th mission ends in tragedy when the craft breaks up while re-entering the atmosphere. The 7 astronauts on board are killed. 2003 March. Missile attacks on Baghdad mark the start of a US-led campaign to topple the Iraqi leader Saddam Hussein. US forces advance into central Baghdad in early April. 2005 August. Hundreds of people are killed when Hurricane Katrina, the most destructive storm to hit the US in decades, sweeps through Gulf Coast states. Much of the city of New Orleans is submerged by floodwaters. 2008 September. Turmoil in the US and international financial markets as major Wall Street investment bank Lehman Brothers collapses and other big US financial players face growing troubles as a result of the credit crunch. 2008 November. Democratic Senator Barack Obama becomes the first black president of the United States. 2011 May. US forces kill Al-Qaeda leader Osama bin Laden in an operation in the Pakistani city of Abbottabad. 2012 September. The US ambassador in Libya is killed when armed men storm the consulate in Benghazi. 2013 April. Twin bomb blasts targeting the Boston Marathon kill 3 people and injured more than 170. 2013 May. Former National Security Agency (NSA) contractor Edward Snowden flees to Russia via Hong Kong after revealing leaking information on extensive internet and telephone surveillance by US intelligence. 2014 August to November. The shooting of an unarmed black teenager by a white policeman sparks a week of riots in the Missouri town of Ferguson. 2015 June. US accuses Chinese hackers of massive breach of personal data of nearly 4 million government workers. China denies any role. 2016 November. Republican candidate Donald Trump wins presidential election, defeating Democratic candidate Hillary Clinton in one of the biggest political upsets in US history. 2018 April. China imposes 25% tariffs on a range of US goods in response to similar US measures. 2018 June. After months of hostile rhetoric, President Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un meet in Singapore and agree to continue dialogue aimed at reducing tensions on the Korean peninsula. 2020 January. US drone strike kills leading Iranian commander Qasem Soleimani at Baghdad airport, promoting Iranian threats of retaliation. 2020 November. Democrat former Vice President Joe Biden defeats Donald Trump in the presidential election.